right now is a pilot program in Worcester, and people realize what happens in Worcester will influence what happens in the rest of Massachusetts and perhaps the rest of the United States and internationally. Worcester is the center of the action today, because what happens in Worcester will not stay in Worcester.
The fire department to put out the fire. You have fire drills in your school, so you know what to do. Automobiles can be dangerous too. They sometimes cause bad accidents, but still risk. There are safety rules that car drivers and people who are walking must obey. Now, we must be ready for a new danger.
A smart meter is a device that will measure electricity. It's a device that is replacing conventional meters that are on the sides of people's dwellings. Where the old conventional meters, you could probably see a mechanical dial going around measuring your electricity. A smart meter will be fundamentally different in the respect that the smart meter can communicate directly with several devices in the house. It will record the activity of those electrical appliances at 15-minute intervals. It will convey that information to the electric company, and then that information will be presented in an electric bill. And it also has some two-way abilities such that the electrical company will eventually have the ability to influence what's happening in the house.
A smart meter is a meter, like a Harley Davidson is a bicycle. It has two transmitters, one for the neighborhood, one for inside the home. The neighborhood transmitter transmits between 14,000 and 190,000 times a day. They can be remotely shut off, and they have two transmitters. They can be remotely shut off. What else do they do?
Take and receive instructions.
Right, and they implement instructions from utilities and third parties besides.
I think people are concerned about smart meters because there really isn't too much of an explanation about why they have them or where they came from. There is some sort of environmental justification. It's not very clear what it is. People say it saves energy, and then you ask, how does it save energy? They're just kind of like, here's this answer that isn't really detailed, and people just don't understand them because there is no clear justification for why they have them or where they came from.
The debate concerning smart meters is complex because the smart meters are implemented differently in different parts of the country.
I would be concerned about anybody actually having a smart meter on their home.
Americans love technology. It's like an American thing. But people don't like technology when it's forced upon them. People love saving up their money to buy technology. People love using technology. But when technology is pushed on them, they don't like it.
I think that a lot of people are enjoying this wave of innovation in the technology sector. And people are buying, more complex phones and, all different kinds of pads and things right now. But there's a lack of awareness about what that implies, the infrastructure that's required to support that technology.
They have the chance to save up their money to get a great new smartphone. They love that. That's like a great thing. But when your electric meter just changes and it's just all of a sudden different and it's this strange technology that nobody knows really what it is, you're immediately afraid, the radio waves, the frequencies, and then you realize that smartphone that I really wanted is the same thing, but I didn't ask for the smart meter, so the smart meter is scary.
In my experience thinking about this issue, for one, it's a change. We have some, the new smart meter technology, it's a change from the existing condition.
I think change toward unknown is dealt with trepidation and well-founded fear, where you're being taken someplace you don't know where it's going. There's reason to be suspicious, especially in the non-transparent world that we're living in.
Americans tend to be very afraid of things that might happen, like the duck and cover videos.
There was a turtle by the name of Bert, and Bert the turtle was very alert.
Hide under your desk and run away, and if you're on the sidewalk, there's that little clip of that video where the two kids are walking on the sidewalk, and so they just duck down and they're like, fear! A lot of times Americans are quick to be afraid of something, and they'll understand it after they're afraid. But until they understand it, they're going to fear.
Remember what to do, friends. Now tell me right out loud. What are you supposed to do when you see the flash?
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men.
In looking at whether it's the government's fault or whether it is the electric company's fault, you have to understand that sometimes the government is swayed by outside factors, and the company is simply working within the guidelines it's given. Whether those are safe or not, it's not their place to judge. The government is supposed to do that for them.
I think that issue of blame is preventing us from moving forward and trying to move towards some kind of resolution. But I would place both parties in a place of being responsible.
We know the way the politics works and how lobbying works. And, it's so I don't think that the federal guidelines are completely independent of the industries that those guidelines regulate.
In the United States, the corporations, the big money organizations tend to have more sway, and I know that you can't literally write out a check and hand it to a representative and say, vote this way, but you can say, that super PAC that I'm involved with may or may not fund you if you don't vote this way on this next bill.
If you were a hairdresser and you had a certain temperature where you washed your client's hair, and your clients came and said, you know what, you're burning my head, it's too hot. And you were a proactive business person and a compassionate person, you might just say, okay, it's only this client. But if 5 or 6 other clients came in and said the same thing, in an open feedback loop, a responsible business person would come forward and say, we have problems here. And what we have happening right now is what we call regulatory capture, where the industries have captured the regulatory bodies who are responsible for monitoring them.
It's a tricky situation, but I think that's one of the reasons why the citizens groups are so opposed to even having the initial infrastructure installed. Especially the wireless infrastructure, because once that wireless infrastructure is installed and being used, then it's for a whole variety of political reasons. It's going to be difficult to remove that or to shift to another form of smart meter. It's even possible that people are aware of the pitfalls, but due to the politics within the energy industry, that those pitfalls will, even in spite of the pitfalls, a suboptimal grid will be implemented.
The daily work of government involves a lot more than speeches and cornerstone laying.
I think with most technologies, it has some potential. It has some potential pitfalls. And whether or not it will be successful will depend on whether we can identify the potential advantages, the potential pitfalls, and whether the pitfalls will actually be avoided.
I think the whole paradigm of how we are perceiving the idea of sustainability and the way that we are trying to resolve it needs to be examined. And one of the big pieces of the smart grid is just to optimize the electricity that we're already generating to delay the cost of necessary changes in what we're doing.
It's worth looking into, but I think all the questions are not answered, and I would hope that National Grid would be open to reconfiguring their plans based on what happens in Worcester and this pilot program. I mean, to me, the purpose of a pilot program would be to learn something. But if National Grid takes that approach to learn something from Worcester and then to modify future programs, then that would be a winning situation.
we're exposing people to a possible human carcinogen, which is probably a definite human carcinogen, but because of a political process, it didn't get to that classification. And we are selling this to people as sustainability.
It's been just shocking to me. Very few people know what the smart grid is. Very few know what a smart meter is, or that the smart meters are even communicating wirelessly. That's one of my number one concerns, that substantial change is happening, and the overwhelming majority of the people I know are completely unaware.